as we go. But hello, for those of you who may not know us, we are not Charlie and Megan. We are Tom and Laura. We are also partners at Next Jump out of our New York office.
Fuse thinks I'm Laura. Just to be clear. And we're pinch hitting for Charlie and Megan today. And we were going to cover the topic today, as Laura said, is mental preparedness, which is a topic that we're both working on personally. So it's interesting to me. But also, I mean, kind of what we do is digest lessons and practices and protocols from Next Jump and kind of productize it. And so this is something we're working on for that. And so we want to share our latest kind of workshop with you guys, and hopefully we can all learn something together.
Yeah, and then we'll share a little bit more about how we're like internalizing as a team and kind of like how that's going for us, and go through that on that front.
Also, I'm Kathy, and I will be on the chat today. So if anybody, feel free to use the chat aggressively. I will help relay to Tom and Laura. So this can be more of a discussion as we go on. So I'm watching the chat. Feel free to put it. Love it.
Cool. Thanks, Kathy.
Could you have the gallery view up the front?
See everybody. Thank you. There you go. Wonderful. Okay, so zooming out, what do we mean when we talk about mental preparedness? And I think that could be many different interpretations of this, but the way that I define it is around like the skill set or mindset, call it whatever you would like, to be ready to situationally adjust. And I think it's emphasis on the word adjust. And in order to adjust, you kind of need to be mentally light, flexible, open-minded, playful, just like being able to ready to mentally adjust with whatever the day is going to throw at you. So this illustration here of like trees, bending is something that kind of resonates with me. I have a perfect planning tendency type person where I like to have everything laid out and plan, and this is the plan, this is how it's going to go. And I have a lot of expectations that I've created in my head on how things will be. However, when that doesn't actually happen, that could be a bit dangerous. So if you can be a bit light, and the idea is kind of like if the wind or momentum is blowing you in a certain direction, are you going to be able to bend with that energy? And if you think of the analysis of like a tree, if you are like very rigid and kind of not able to bend and go with the flow on that type of thing, you are likely to snap, break, bad. Literally, my mom, when I was a kid, used to be like, Laura, you're a tree in the breeze. So it plays in my head all the time. That is still something that I'm working on, but I didn't have all this stuff that we're going to go through today. So
I kind of think about it like autopilot. Kind of the more I've dug into this, the more I realize I am kind of autopilot most days. I have a plan about what I want to get done that day. X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And I don't, by default, sort of naturally adjust to the situation or take a read of kind of what I'm feeling and if things are going off. And I think that's just the normal condition. We're kind of, we have a script for the day. We're just going to kind of play that out, come hell or high water. And that just doesn't work so well anymore. You do tend to snap, more often than I'd like. So we're going to talk about how to kind of avoid that and become more agile.
Yeah. So I was talking about this idea of perfect planning, just that does not exist. It is impossible to look around every single corner. I think, even companies, they used to have like larger, strategic plans. Maybe there was like a 5-year plan. Maybe you even had a 5-year plan for your career trajectory. Maybe you met with someone and you like planned it out. Just unfortunately, it's like all that is just throw it out the window right now. And I think one of the more famous quotes, and I like this one, made me think of this, is like the whole, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, Mike Tyson quote. But I don't know about the rest of you guys, but the amount of times I'm feeling like I'm getting punched in the face is increasing. And so at that point, what's that saying where it's like first time, like shame on you, second time, shame on me. So then it's like, why do we keep getting surprised when we get punched in the face with different things going differently than we think that they're going to? And to kind of get to that acceptance of that is the new normal, to be able to kind of work around that. And so that kind of mental lightness, being able to adjust, if you get punched in the face and it's different, what do you do, is that whole mental lightness that we're talking about. And the idea is that you're not going to do good work if you're stuck in your head. And there's been studies that have shown, this is like example here from Martha Beck, about the levels of anxiety that you have actually impacts your ability to be creative. So I think of creative as the same way of being adjusting. If you can kind of like see more options and choices, be more calm and kind of think outside the box, if you will, you're just not going to be able to do that type of work if your like anxiety and mental preparedness is not.
Yeah, and like more and more work, pretty much almost everything is getting more and more creative, because as technology ramps up, anything that can be automated gets automated. So you're kind of left with work that requires some, the human X factor to it, this kind of creative element to it. And I grew up in a mode of, if you have anxiety or kind of negative feelings, you just shove that stuff down and keep on marching. I think it's difficult to accept that if you really want to do kind of good creative work, make stuff that, other people can feel your excitement about it, you can't be in like this negative mood all the time. And I'm totally okay with being in like a negative mood and kind of marching forward. So, it's how do you get out of that?
Yeah, totally. And I think you bring up a good point here, which is like, we're talking about when you're working in more of a creative space. And so that I don't necessarily mean, oh, I'm painting. I'm like, that's one form of creativity, but it's just creativity means like when you have to do something where it's like not clear what to do. Like if you just need to come in and like shoot off a bunch of emails or attend meeting where like someone else is running the meeting and you're like a participant, that's like not the type of work we're talking about in this context of mental preparedness. It's more the like ambiguous situations where you're like, I'm not so sure. So it's that type of work that we're talking about.
Yeah, I'd say just about everyone on this call is doing creative work, and with Krista Kwong are, coding new products. That's totally creative. I suspect in the veterinary world, who knows what's going to walk in the door.
Yeah,
There's a lot of creativity required, and pretty much like I said before, I think about my 15-year-old son a lot in the kind of world he's growing up in, and simply studying kind of math and science and I'm just gonna learn some skill and be okay. That's just not the world anymore. You have to have this, whether you're creating a restaurant and a cuisine. It's this kind of creative work is what will make the difference, I think, to business, to people, to life.
So to zoom out for a second, I wanted to talk about how the brain works. And so this is a way that we have been like describing a lot of our work and what we've been working on that I think has been resonating with people. But the idea is that you have two like large brain systems in your brain, and that 5% is this like conscious, self-regulated, like willpower part of the brain. But actually 95% of our behaviors and actions are driven by this non-conscious automatic. So we call it this like your automatics. And so the idea is like, call that maybe emotions, feelings, intuition. Like Charlie and Megan have covered this in Lit before, where it's like your brain is absorbing like just an incredible amount of information at any given moment, but you're only consciously able to process a very, 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 very tiny sliver of that. And so what we've noticed when it comes to trainings and education, and whether you're a kid growing up or you're an adult in the workplace trying to kind of get new skills, like the vast majority of programs are all in this like idea of like these 5% skills. So whether it might be kind of like logical skills, like how you handle feedback. I mean, we have programs around this too. And I feel like this is just kind of what everything is flooded. But then if you zoom out, that's actually only 5% of the skill set that you need. And you 100% need that and keep working on that. But like also, how do you train this other like 95% of that is driving actually the majority of your behavior? So we are saying that is kind of the ability to identify and update these mental patterns, micro behaviors that are actually driving all of the majority of our behavior. So for instance, I think you are much more likely to just make an emotional decision than you are a logical decision. And I think we can pause for a moment and talk about that if you want. But I think a lot of times you have a very strong emotional reaction to something, and then you use your logical brain to like back it up. Like, why does this make sense? You have an intuition, you have a feeling, you have a 50% idea. You're like, I think it's kind of this. And that's all your brain making a sense of all of your past experiences, mashing that together in a really, really fast timeline and being like, I think we should do X. And then you try to back it up with your logic.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much like from when I grew up, this is massively different in terms of, work from Daniel Kahneman, Jonathan Haidt, Lisa Barrett, others. We're kind of debunking this myth that like, we're really driving our life through that blue wedge through this 5%. In fact, it's the 95% that's driving everything. And the way that we've been attacking it is kind of using this word automatics, that we each have our, sort of set of default behaviors, 10 of them, 100 of them. There's
Thousands
of them, really.
Yeah.
But some number of them are repeated and impact you. And if you, in a way that may not be helpful. So like for me, and we're at the end of the kind of session today, we'll kind of give a tool that we're building out that helps you identify your own automatics, and ID the ones that help you versus hurt you. for me, one thing that's hurting me is this, that I have this default, when I get stressed out or encounter some situation I don't know, I tend to go very analytical. Like, okay, some problem shows up, some email shows up in my inbox and I feel that gut, like, oh, okay, this is a problem to deal with. My instinct is to, okay, let's get all the information, let's go back to my cockpit of an office and make sure everything, hunker down, print out everything. We're gonna make a smart, logical decision here. Like, that's my gut reaction. And I kind of beat myself up on that because I look at, other people I work with who aren't here today, but they're much more intuitive and they seem to make decisions, willy-nilly left and right. And to me, that feels so like, wow, I want to do that. But I'm so like hunkered down. And what I've come to appreciate is that automatic helped me a lot. It got me really good grades. It got me promoted. It got me this amazing job when I graduated college. It helped me a lot, that automatic. But now it is hindering me in that the situation has changed where I need to be more, I just have to be quicker and make more decisions in environments where it's not clear what the right decision is. So you might as well just make one to kind of move the ball forward. So I'm purposefully repping whenever I feel that feeling, which happens like 10 times a day. So instead of like taking a time out and thinking about it, I will grab someone and say, hey, Kathy, something just happened. Let's just talk this out for a sec. And then I kind of force myself to take one action, if only to learn more information. So that's sort of the opposite of my automatic. I'm trying to learn a new one. But sorry, there's a very long-winded explanation. We each have our own little set of automatics that if we can figure those out and address them, it'll help us, help us in our career and lives.
Yes, definitely. So, that's something that we've been unpacking for a number of years, is even like defining, like, what is this, like, where to start in this type of work? Like, if your goal is like personal development, sustained behavior change, like dropping you in at level 10 with like 1 million programs running, it's like oftentimes that doesn't really move the needle. And what we have found moves the needle is when you address these automatics. So the idea is that if you can find your repeated thematic patterns and address those, that is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck in training. But that is, easier said than done. I feel like you got a lot going on in your head. It's automatic, so it's not so obvious. So Charlie and Megan have mentioned this in previous episodes of LIP, this idea of the mental scan. And so the idea is can you insert a ritual like this on your way into work, whenever you're about to start a project? Maybe it's multiple times a day, depending on what you're setting out to do. But can you scan yourself and be like, what is the baseline of my mental state right now? So if you think of this as like a scale of 1 to 10, of like mental chatter, mental stress, mental mood, like whatever you want to call it, and 0 being like you are pumped to come to work. You are foaming at the mouth, so excited, can't wait to try something. You're like, ooh, Tom, like I have so many ideas. Like that is like
we're gonna be creative today and do some
like
good
so
stuff.
much going on, right? So if that's 0, and on the other end of this being like triggered, like complete panic, shutting down, you're just like nothing is coming in and out, just like just no, right? So that would be like level 10. Can you get in the habit of like figuring out where you are on this scale? Like, and 5 being neutral, which I would say is extreme. I think everyone would want to hit 5 and be like, it's 5. 5 does not really exist in my opinion. I think 5 is a lie. So I was like, maybe I should just add an X over 5. 5 is a lie.
I mean, when we did our feedback app, we purposely got rid of that middle because
so maybe we should get rid of 5 on this actually. So real-time editing, no 5. There is no such thing as neutral. You are never neutral. If you think you're neutral, you're not. And I think that's actually when we've been thinking of this as a team, it's like do this for yourself, but then, needing to kind of expose that to someone else as well. So like, for example, how we have been using this as a team is that we come in, Tom, Kathy, and I work very closely together. We come in and we kind of share where are we at. We actually share a number with each other and then kind of like some bullet points behind it. And how I've been challenging myself is that I think most of the time you come in and you're like, if nothing horrendous is going on, that you're not like, oh, like then you're just like, oh, I'm okay. And like, you like to think that that's 5, like that you think that that's neutral. And so I have been working to like redefine that, like, okay, probably means not okay. Probably means there's more going on underneath the surface than you're really paying attention to. And so we've been kind of challenging. Sometimes it's easier to see in other people. Like sometimes Tom will come in and be like, oh, I think,
yesterday.
and I'll be like, I don't think you're fine. Like you don't look fine. And so it's like being able to actually call it out for another person and be like, oh, maybe you're right. Because like, I don't know. We talked about this once before. I don't think anyone wants to come in today and be like, well, here's another day where I'm at 7, 8, and it's this, and it's just like, oh, it feels gross, right? So it's like, I liked this image of this woman like vacuuming her brain. I've been trying to like reframe this as a little bit lighter, where it's like kind of like brushing your teeth. You know, like you wake up in the morning, you got to clean out what everything went on overnight over there, and depending on what you going on, maybe you want to brush more than once a day. You know, and so it's just like trying to make it not such a big deal. But I've just been impressed myself doing this, that like the flip in my brain of like okay equals not okay has actually opened up a lot deeper like discussions and just kind of awareness in myself that like there's actually a lot more just playing on that autopilot than you're used to tuning into at any given time.
Yeah, and the link to mental preparedness, what we, called this session, and this sort of mental scan, this how are you feeling? It has to do with this, pie chart thing and the red area. The red area is this chart. It's how are you feeling? And to recognize that you can't force yourself to be into a good mood, but the biggest part of being mentally prepared is first figuring out how you're actually feeling at this moment. But what's going on under the hood for you, and kind of making that visible, which is sort of the exercise or the workshop that we're going to do together today.
So when I think of this bar here, though, like the idea is that this zone for creative work is, on the green side of the scale here. But if you are just a baseline start of this practice, if you feel like you are 7, 8, 9, 10, just stop. Like don't go into creative mode, because you're just not going to make anything good quality. So it is actually a waste of your time, which is just a whole different frame. You're like,
and you can do other things. You can clean up your to-do list. You can, do something that would put you in a better mood. You can address the things that are, and if you're aware of what's sucking up your mental cycles, you can address them and free up some cycles.
Yeah, it's cool. Savannah's saying in the chat that feedback from her manager, work on speeding up, that she overanalyzes when 95% correct, spending too much energy on getting to 99% correct, and we often overthink. I wonder if that is kind of like what is getting in our way a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I was just typing back, but I feel like oftentimes we overthink and we over add importance. And I think you had put this in the chat earlier, but like whether it's better to be quick or whether it should be correct. I think we want to train to be both. I think that's the whole like training your judgment, but our judgment kind of sucks because we don't use it that often.
Yeah.
But I think the part for both here is like we have the ability to iterate and to correct mistakes. And I think that's the part that we're like not trained to do from like years of, factory working, like don't make mistakes, that's how you get fired, versus like try something, fix it, iterate on it. I feel like that's been a big, probably the biggest for me.
Yeah.
It's like these things might not have right answers until you find what it kind of looks like. So
Yeah, that's good.
this is a personal challenge of mine to get over that hump of like, oh my God, if I do this now, I'll make a mistake, but I can also fix it. That was like wild for me.
Yeah. It's like you don't have to live with that decision forever. Like it's like what's that tip that's like, oh, if I do this, can I undo it?
Yeah.
And like 90+% of the time you can undo something. Like I think there's very few things that you can't
One of those Jeff Bezos.
apologize for, course correct,
truisms.
like some,
Yeah.
like it's I think that
Most decisions and there are some contexts, like, I don't know, if you're a doctor or something, there are contexts you really can't make mistakes, right? But in the vast majority of contexts, mistakes are correctable, and it's better to make the rapid mistake and correct than to overanalyze, delay,
And do nothing.
do nothing. Yeah.
100%.
because it's like a lot of times you're just overthinking on information that you have, but if you act, you end up getting more information. So then that actually becomes like clearer as you go.
You can practice on like the small things that you overthink on. That's what we've done. We have like used to do this JFDI, which is like just effing do it, which was you probably overthink in more places than you are even aware of, even on things that like mean absolutely nothing, and like kind of training yourself to not overthink those. You start to learn more about yourself of what you're.
Well, I think even the
predicting.
first part is realizing when
Yeah.
you're overthinking.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's actually related to kind of this exercise that we're talking right now. Is like even just the awareness of being like, oh gee, this is one of those examples where I'm overthinking is
Yeah.
like 2/3 of the battle.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's example, if overthinking is one of like your automatics on things, you will start to, if you can pick up on that and address that, then like that will have huge huge.
Yeah, you know,
chaos.
Kathy, that just fucking do has been repeating in my head for maybe about 4 months. And part of why this summer we've just been up and going to the beach or up and jumping on a bike ride is just to kind of, I've been trying to exercise that mental agility of just doing things and just practicing that at home first. And seeing how that
Mhm.
pours out into like growing the brand out. And it actually, it helps. Doing
Yeah,
the
it's-
small
It's
things
making
that you suggest, like,
it's
just
creating
do
an,
it,
au-
do
it's
something that I
creating an
gotta do.
automatic around, just do it.
Yeah, and then I'm realizing that really I can just do whatever and figure it out as I
Figure it out,
go.
right, right.
As I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, and figure it out as you go. It does give you like a healthy level of confidence, because the more you do something, you're gonna get in, you can't plan for it all.
Right.
So then you have to adjust.
Right.
But the more you successfully adjust, the more you're like, oh, I can adjust. I
Yeah.
can do
I
it.
was down with fear, which is
Yeah.
probably why I walked in today, like, just feeling
Yeah.
ready to fight a lion, because it just, I was down with some fear.
Yeah, I actually think that that contributes to that feeling of mentally light, because you're now trusting in your ability to be able to adjust. Like if you're working on that as a skill, then instead of it just being like, I must be right, I must be right, I must be right, you're just like, I don't know, we'll find out how we go. You know, it's like that's a lighter mindset. So I'd argue that that is mental preparedness. in the context of this. So that's cool. Okay. However, so when we're talking about self-awareness and kind of looking at these automatics, it happens really fast, so it's actually hard to see. If you think about it, they can be like a blind spot, and so they're called blind spots for a reason. And it's counterintuitive, but we found that self-awareness is actually just difficult to train alone. You need to expose it to somebody else. So I think we've shared this before, but there was this HBR study that did, a 5-year research program and discovered that 95% of people think that they're self-aware, but actually only 10 to 15% of people are. And there's lots of lenses that you can put on self-awareness. There's like self-awareness of like what's going on in your own head. There's like self-awareness of how you're perceived by other people. We can go on and on and on. But the idea is that if you kind of just do that circularly by yourself, it is usually not very accurate. So the idea is that you need a mirror to kind of help show yourself what you're doing. And so I think ideally in a lot of situations that can be another person that knows you well. So it could be a training partner, it could be a mentor, maybe it's like a close family member or a friend. But I think in a work context, it has been harder and harder to find that for people, especially as more people are working from home as their like predominant place, where it's like less likely that you're next to someone that you could just be like, oh, hey, Tom, tap you on the shoulder for like a micro interaction where you're like, I'm not so sure about X, Y, and Z, or I'm actually really worried about how this meeting's gonna go, and talking that out really fast is happening less and less, because that feels like a big inconvenience, because it's not like you're gonna pick up the phone or like, hi, Tom, can we please get on a Zoom meeting to go through this like small head case that I'm going through? Like like no one wants to do that, right? And I think it's kind of unrealistic. So those types of interactions with other people aren't happening as much. And so a cool tool that has just come out of technology is the idea of using AI to help you with this. So I think in a best case scenario, take the best of AI. It's fantastic at pattern recognition. And we'll talk about some other benefits of using that as a tool for self-awareness. But do that plus, with another human, then you're really set up well to train this. But even just level 1, using an AI to help you on this journey is going to be really beneficial. So at Next Jump, we created an AI around this. So actually, Kwang and Krista, who are on the call today, they created the AI around this, which is fun. But all trained on kind of our expertise in this in-practice model that how we base all of our studies on kind of how to, with a high bar, train this in yourself. So we're going to do a workshop. And so I think some of you might be familiar with this, but I would ask you to be mentally flexible and come into this with an open mind. We're going to show a couple of extra things on this. And so what we're going to do is we're actually just going to do it right now. We're going to write an on my mind. So pull up your phone, pull up your email. There's a QR code here. It's just, we're going to draft an email. We're not going to send it yet to AiCoach@nextjump.com. And some of you might be familiar with the format that we're going to use. However, we're going to up the level of, not difficulty, but like, if there's like a level 1, this is gonna be like level 2 on how you can get a little bit more out of this practice. So we'll just do it today, because I feel like it's better to just do it in motion. Okay, so you're gonna pick up your phone, we're gonna draft an email, And the idea is that you're going to, if you want to just go to the next slide, the idea, you're gonna pick an emotion and just describe why you're feeling it that way. So if you want to throw in the mental scan, feel free if you're feeling extra fancy. But you know, kind of just pick an emotion and why you're feeling it today. We'll literally take like 1 minute to do that now. We'll do it at the same time.
Like I'm feeling,
Motion, insert.
I'm feeling excited and then why,
Yeah,
or I'm feeling
yeah.
frustrated and then why.
Yeah.
We'll just, we'll do a quick, don't send the email, doesn't matter what the subject line is. Just write an emotion word and why you feel that way.
And then send it.
No, don't send
Don't
it.
send it yet.
Pause.
Hold your horses.
Maybe take 10 more seconds, just wrap up whatever
But
thought you're typing.
don't send the email yet. We're gonna give you a little bit more of a hint as to how to get the most out of this practice.
So now the idea is take whatever you wrote and see if you can add an additional layer to it. So if you can add more specifics, more context and emotions or details in it, you can see some before and afters, like I'm having trouble with my team is different than yesterday in our 9 a.m. meeting. I got defensive when Sarah questioned my project timeline. Just a different bar of specificity and detail.
And this, by the way, came out of a analysis looking at what type of, when you're a mentee and you're being coached, whether by a human or an AI, what do you feed it to get the best results? And it tended to be these three things where you have real examples with a lot of context and detail, and you're describing how you feel about it, not just sort of logical, what I think about it. So spend another minute or so and just add some more depth to whatever you wrote.
Like 10 seconds more. Still don't send. One more round. Okay. Now, what we'd like you to do is whatever emotion you labeled initially, take a look at this wheel for instance here, and see if you can make how you're describing how you feel more specific or precise. This happens to be like really small on my screen, so I'm trying to think. So for example, if you wrote that you are sad, you can see here that you've got a lot of other options here. You got lonely, vulnerable, despair, guilty, depressed, hurt. But then even within that, there's like isolated, victimized, fragile, a lot ashamed, empty. Like those are much more descriptive words than just sad. So take a rep and see, can you get super specific on that emotion that you picked up?
And once we're done with this, we're gonna kind of loop back and discuss why this matters.
Yeah.
There's, a bunch of sort of academic research around the importance of labeling what you feel as precisely as you can.
We can put one word.
Yeah, try to pick a word on that.
20 seconds or so to.
And then if you're already done with that piece, the idea is we're gonna take another like minute or so and do that for two more emotions. And so the idea is we're rarely only feeling one thing at a time. That I feel like is an oversimplification. So in the idea of being more precise and granular, like, can you repeat the same thing we just did, but then for two other emotions that you got going on in your head? And maybe we'll leave this wheel up also during this time, just because I know that this can just be a helpful guide.
So 1, 2, 3 again, 2 more times.
Yep. So just pick two other emotions that you're feeling, why you're feeling them, try to get specific.
And then layer it in the email.
Yeah. So you're gonna have your email end up with emotion description,
Emotion
description, emotion description. So 3 little chunks.
I was overwhelmed and sleepy, like right next to each other. Overwhelmed and sleepy.
I mean, overwhelm can make you sleepy.
Where is that?
I see sleepy. He goes bad, stressed, out of control, and right down there, sleepy.
Oh, yeah, under tired.
Tired is different than stressed, I guess, maybe. Yeah. So we'll just do 30 more seconds, just whatever your visceral breakup is. It's a rep and not overthink.
Yes, don't overthink.
Maybe last 10 seconds or so. And when you are done, you can go ahead and hit send now. For those of you who may be ready to go.
So that, some of you have done On My Minds before, call them OMMs before, but if not, this was your first OMM. When you email it off to AiCoach, it'll respond back with some, advice based on what you wrote.
So wrap up if you're still doing that, but we're gonna just kind of, while it's hitting the AI and everything, we're gonna talk a little bit more about the intentions of this practice, kind of like what are the benefits and how does it relate to mental preparedness? How does it relate to kind of like high performance in like a work setting? And so actually really quick before you go down, the idea is that 2/3 of this is the awareness piece. So we talked a little bit on it, but the idea is, can you slow it down what is going on in your brain? Mental chatter or just your brain running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, it's running whether you want it to or not. And so high performance is to be able to kind of like train what is going on in there and learn to like listen to it as signal, not necessarily it's accurate, which we'll talk about right now, but like versus ignoring it. And so I think Tom was covering this before. I think a lot of conventional, and traditional education is kind of like awareness. Like I meant, emotions are like the enemy of like good decision making. They're like, oh, don't make an emotional decision. And maybe I can agree with that, but it makes it sound like don't have any emotions. Like once you are devoid of emotion, then you can like make a decision, and
Yeah.
that's just not,
Yeah.
that's impossible. And in fact, I think emotions are important signals and actually an advantage in decision making, but it's if you are kind of training and looking at it. So we'll kind of go through that piece there now. So your mind is doing this always on automatic pattern recognition thing. So think about, you get a stimulus that happens to you in the present, you get an email. You are immediately making it, you're thinking of something that happened to you in the past. You're like, gee, this email reminds me of that other time my boss emailed me and they were really mad. And then based on that, you are making a future outlook or prediction about what you think will happen. Without even opening the email, you're like, this is a bad email, my boss is angry at me. And all of that is happening extremely fast. Like most of the time, you're not even aware of it. And it just cycles around and around and around. But the thing to realize is that most of your predictions that you are making are inaccurate. What you think is going to happen is most likely not going to happen. And if you've ever actually logged your predictions and then gone back and actually written down what has happened, you can actually track this for yourself. So if you are skeptical and you think that you're an expert prediction maker, please go ahead and track this. It's like super simple. You just kind of like before you just like write down what you think is going to happen, and then you can kind of revisit at the end of the day what actually happened based off of your scenarios. It's going to be wildly off. And so the idea is that you want to fact check your own thoughts. And we found this, I thought it was like articulated well, is that your thoughts are going to create scenarios in your mind that reflect your insecurities, your fears, you're worried, all that crap going on in the back of your head. I think you've heard it like your internal terrorist, you get like hijacked, whatever you want to call it. But the idea is that can you actually slow down and fact check your thoughts before you just accept them? You kind of can tell yourself stories or narratives that aren't true. And so if you think about automatics being like the good side of automatics versus the bad side of automatics, I would argue that fact checking your own thoughts with an AI, with another person, especially when you're kind of in this more land of uncertainty or creative work, is a good habit. On the flip side, things that are a bad habit, I think we might have shared this before, but it's like, a lot of us do this, which is like something goes well, you did a good job, you're like, oh, that was good. But then some minor mistake happens, it doesn't, you kind of mess up a little bit, and then you're like on the floor with this like diatribe of like 900 ways to Sunday on how you could have done better, should have seen that coming, blah, 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 blah. That is a bad habit. I'm guilty of this. I would call that the extra. There's so many different ways you could call this, but it's like, you don't need to pour the extra on it. It's like you make something small into a giant big deal. And then what you're doing is you're actually making that like a bigger deal in your brain, so that when you're doing this prediction stuff in the future, you're now blowing stuff out of proportion. So you are actually making more of your future predictions more inaccurate because you are attaching a lot of baggage and crap to something that may not accurately need that level of baggage and crap.
Which is a bias almost everybody has.
Yeah.
And, we were learning how, there's sort of a evolutionary biological basis to that, in that your brain wants to bias towards a thing that will protect you, like physically. Right. And so it's always looking out for danger. It's doing this prediction thing all the time. And if anything goes wrong, it amplifies, or thinks something is going to go wrong. It amplifies that in your brain because it's trying to avoid it. And maybe as we're walking down the street and trying to avoid, getting run over by a car, that's all, working as it should. But in a cognitive work environment, it overshoots all the time in a way that's like not helpful.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to like the slowing down part, I think just the hard part that I've been having is just admitting to myself what is actually the stories that are playing in my head, because honestly, they sound really stupid when I actually like admit them to myself that like, no, actually I'm thinking about how this person's perceiving me, or I'm just kind of annoyed that we have to board our dogs this weekend and that's going to cost me a lot of extra money. Like it's just, there's like, it's actually most of the time not very pretty. And I think the part that I've been struggling with is that it doesn't actually have to make sense. Like, just because you're feeling a certain way doesn't mean it's logical. And I would love to logic it. It's just not, but it doesn't mean that it's impacting your mindset, your decision-making any less. It does not have to make sense. And I don't think you even have to make sense. I think you just have to be like, it just is. Yeah. And I think it's that pouring the extra on is that level of self-judgment that then you pour on top of it that makes it even harder to work on this stuff. Yeah. It's like you're making yourself radioactive when this is just a part of the human condition. Right. And it's a waste of time. It's a waste of your energy. I think I spend more time like fighting the emotions that I'm feeling rather than just actually feeling them. And that's actually making me slow this whole thing down too much. And I think I could be making a lot more progress in this type of work if I can move through that faster.
Like maybe an example of like kind of how he puts this into practice. So Laura said, yesterday I came into work and clearly visibly I was saying, she's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm okay. And she looked at me and was like, you ain't okay. Like what's going on? And so I sat down for a minute, okay, let me do this. And I listen, if at the top level, my kind of using that circle thing, my high level emotion was, I'm in a bad mood. And so why am I in a bad mood? I tried to unpack that. And I came up with 3 emotions, something, I forget exactly what I said, but I think frustrated, sad, angry.
No, you were annoyed
Was the first one.
Annoyed, okay, annoyed was the first one, then there was some kind of fear or
There's
sadness thing.
fear.
And then there was like an angry type thing at the bottom. Anyway, and then for each one of those, I could speak for a few minutes just riffing on, so why do I feel annoyed? And there was a whole list. And why do I feel afraid? There was a whole list. And like, that was very clarifying. Okay, so that's the reality, and this is a whole other class that we've done. It's, as an engineer, I went into I'm an engineer. I studied chemical engineering and computer science. And part of the reason I did that, I remember when I was like 18 years old, I was so clear in my head, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to deal with feelings. Like, what's a profession where I can just deal with numbers? And I like that. You know, it's great, computers. That's, this is all good for me. And then you become an adult, but the science caught up in the past 10 years. It's been crazy how, what I guess is obvious to most people, but it's not obvious to science until recently, was that your decisions are largely governed by that red part of the circle, by your feelings, your intuitions, your sort of non-logical brain. And so this guy, Jonathan Haidt, who's here in New York at NYU, he wrote a bunch of famous books recently, The Anxious Mind, about kids. But his whole research just blew my mind that he did all these studies looking at people that are, if you had a really strong feeling on something, like gun control, or you love Trump, you hate Trump, whatever, like people like, pick any topic that people get amped up about. And he did these studies, can you change their mind? The answer was no, basically. There's no logical argument, but apply that to yourself. Whatever you feel strongly about, your feelings are governing what you're going to do in your actions. They're governing your whole approach to that topic. And your brain is just looking for reinforcements to that. That's kind of our default circuitry. And so that really did blow my mind. I'm like, we're running around acting in accordance with what we feel, but especially in a work setting, you're not supposed to talk about it. So what's up with that, right? So a little example of that yesterday, I was kind of, vomiting all of my sort of negativity that I was coming up with. And that was very clarifying. Okay, there's some things I shouldn't touch today. There are other things that I'm blowing out of proportion. And by the end of that conversation was like, okay, I'm not in a good mood, but I'm closer to 5 now. So that's a better place.
Yeah, it can be like a dial down. And I think one of the things that I've also been working on is like when recognizing, say I'm like in that bad mood piece, and then just kind of hoping that it'll just go away. I'll just be like, oh, I did the mental scan. I'm at like 7, 8, not great. But then I'm like, well, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and hope that goes away. That's
The funny-
it's like that's the automatic part where we're so used to.
You know what's interesting about this? We have a chef in the room, and we also work with Mario, with Chef Danny, and what I've heard, at least from Chef Danny, but you can disconfirm this if it's not true. But he said, when I'm in a bad mood, the food comes out disgusting. Like you can taste the negativity in what he's cooking.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that true?
absolutely a fact. My wife actually says, when I say, hey, you want me to make dinner? She's like, how you feeling right now? And I'm like, come on, I'm just asking if you want me to make this sausage pasta or not. She was like, I love that sausage pasta when it doesn't have your stinky attitude in it. And it's at those times where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna either, run down the block and have a beer and chill out, or I'm gonna, go play some catch with one of my kids, and then come back and revisit that. So I absolutely can confirm that. It allows the creativity to flow out. It also gives you your point of view on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if your point of view on what you're doing is fogged, then you're all fogged up.
Yeah.
You couldn't have teed this up more beautifully than this next section here. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the part that I thought was fascinating is that this idea of actually getting a better understanding and having a point of view about what is going on in there is actually the bridge to action. So if you think that a 2/3 of the battle is awareness, the other third is this action part. But then it's like kind of how do you practice this? How do you do it? And so I think what happens a lot is when you leave emotion stuff like fuzzy in your brain, it's a big jumbled blob, then you actually don't really know what to do because you're like, I don't know, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, I don't really know why. It's just like, don't touch that, right? But this research is showing the more granular and nuanced that you can get about what you're feeling, it actually gives you more agency to shape your experience. And this actually intuitively does make a lot of sense to me, where it's like, if you can actually parse apart what's going on in there, you do form more of a point of view. And then your brain is working more the way that it is designed to work, because now you're like challenging the accuracy. And then you're like, actually, I wonder if I do X, Y, Z, then you've actually now have more control over how you're feeling, doing. And that action piece then becomes more obvious to you on that front,
Right.
which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, this is from Lisa Barrett, by the
Yeah.
way. She's a professor at Northeastern, and her whole thing, her whole model of how our decisions work is that that cycle is running all the time, and it's taking inputs from from your senses, what you're seeing and hearing, from the past experience you have, from the context that it's in, and from your physical body. Your body is giving, the vagus nerve is giving all sorts of inputs up into your brain. And the way she described it, I might be misquoting this a little bit. Basically, she said, whenever a situation arisen, you've already made up your mind. Like your decisions had already been made, and then you are going through a process of discovering what your brain has already decided what to do. It's not the other way around. So I don't know. That feels actually intuitively right, but it's a pretty shocking way to think that we're not consciously she's pretty explicit that we're not really consciously in charge, that our brain, like,
We're catching up
we're
logically.
catching up logically with what our head
Well,
has
I would
already
kind
decided to
of
do.
argue that, like, based on your listening capabilities, right? Because sometimes the human tends to listen to respond versus actually intentionally listening
Yeah,
to what you're receiving. Because in that case, you don't have to preload your cannon.
Yeah.
You can just chill
But-
and be like, all right,
And
what
that's
is
why
it?
when you're in that 10 zone, or sorry, that 0 zone, when you're in that like green zone of being light, you're kind of in a receptive mode. Like you're in the kitchen, I related to when you guys are, jamming.
Yeah.
And you're just intuitively having fun. Someone says something like, that's a cool idea. And you're just build, as opposed to
But Tom, it
killing.
doesn't mean that you're not reminding yourself that you're in jamming mode, right? Because it's very easy to go from like being in the kitchen on a 200-person Thursday from like jamming mode to like work mode. So the mental agility for me is like reminding myself, yo, I'm here to jam. Like at the end of the day, I could just serve ice water with lemon and it's cool. I get fancy and put in mint, right? And put in little shot glasses or something, and this is a mint something, right? But you can to remind yourself that you're just jamming and you're having a good time. Is how you stay jamming.
Yeah. So moving this into the action piece on this front. So the idea is kind of what are you repping? So if your automatics are something that you're doing all the time, it can help you or hurt you. So the idea is that they have a compounding effect. So if you are working on kind of rewiring your brain and doing a new habit, if you are doing that consistently, you are like building and working to build new neural pathways in your brain. But I think we all like to think that you could just there is this like stay still state where you're like, I'm not getting better, I'm not getting worse, I'm just stuck. And the reality of that is actually just that is not true. You are actually just getting better at continuing whatever you're currently doing. So you're just running, the more you run your neural pathways, the more you reinforce them. So if you think about it, if you have a bad habit and you just keep doing it, you're actually just getting better at getting worse, which just kind of blew my mind when I thought about it. You just keep reinforcing the bad habit. So James Clear, he's the Atomic Habits guy, got very popular, but like, I love this. It's very simple. You get better at what you practice. Everything is practice. So then it becomes, what are you practicing? And we call it in our language, just like, what are you repping? It's like when you go to the gym, like, what are you intentionally, repping? You don't go in, to the gym one day, lift some weights and expect to have a 6-pack the next day. You're expecting a level of like consistency and investment in order to see results from that. And neuroplasticity is the same. So if you're looking for behavior change, it is consistency over intensity. Intensity can help you get started. It can help give you momentum. But then if it's the day in, day out repeatedness, you're not going to rewire your brain. Also by like reading a book, watching a podcast. That's just not how it works. It'd be like we've talked about this before, but it's like learning how to swim without getting in the water. And like that's exactly how this works. If you just keep reading about overthinking and anxiety, you're not going to get better at combating your overthinking and anxiety.
Right.
Like you actually have to like get in there on this stuff and make it real.
Yeah, and I feel like this stuff does compound. We're using that word deliberately. So in the same way, like financial compounding, this sort of behavioral compounding. We're not talking about giant personality shifts, but these are little tweaks. Like for example, I do tend to think too much. And so I look back in the past year, I'd be in a way better spot right now, actually, if I was just more action oriented the whole year. And it's not like there are some big decisions, but mostly it's just every day in, day out, shooting the gun more. It's as simple and as hard as that. And part of what we're trying to unpack here is helping people figure out for yourself, what are those micro habits that if I, like Big Papa, were, just practicing taking the action and learning that you can adjust on the fly, that every one of us has our own journey.
Yeah.
I think there are some patterns, but we each have our own journey on what that is for us. And it's these little tweaks, you make those little tweaks, it has an outsized impact. The other thing I think about a lot is, we've had a lot of, been at Next Jump for over 20, 25 years, whatever, a long time. So when I think back, there are a bunch of very successful people now that, sadly no longer work here, but they're like I feel our alumni, for example, have had a great run in other organizations, especially some young people that we've interacted with. I think because one thing they learned here was to be more, we call no LHF. That's one kind of micro habit, to like really try to be truthful in the uncomfortable moment that happens all the time when no one says anything, to like say that little thing that kind of pushes the ball forward about, what's wrong or what needs to be fixed. And that's the kind of thing, I really think that compounds over a lifetime in a huge way. And most people don't learn that until they're, like 50.
Yeah.
But if you can learn that when you're 20, that's like amazing.
Huge.
And I've seen that, in my own experience, how big that is.
So if we had to summarize kind of like tips or things for today, it's, can you like insert this idea, this ritual of a mental scan, like before you do creative work? And then within that, can you slow it down and plus like expose what is going on in your head? Check, is that accurate? And then look at what shows up repeatedly and then address that. So maybe, yeah, and then the goal of all this, by the way, is to get to that mental preparedness, to feel lighter, have more breakthrough thinking. This made us think of the Lego movie, at the end of the Lego movie, where he becomes like a master builder and he's like, I can see everything, and how the pieces fit together and the this and the that. And you're just, so I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't want to feel more like that on a regular basis. But I think the idea is this is also like a practice. Like this is a constant gardening exercise. And I think it's like, you don't just one and done this type of thing. Like, once you get better at something, maybe something new comes in. It's like it's just part of being like alive. It's like we're constantly in motion. The world is constantly in motion. So to feel this as like an ongoing practice of something to invest in yourself. And so if you can get more awareness of what is tripping you up, that is going to get you a lot of ROI if you can invest in that piece for you. But maybe we want to pause for a moment. We all just did this. So if anyone kind of had interesting responses or just things on your mind from the class itself, happy to have conversation, questions, things of that sort. Pause, you can put it in the chat, unmute, casual class.
Someone must have a
I think people are reading their emails.
Should we?
My coach was telling me about overthinking, and I was like, yes.
Here we are again.
Here we go.
Yeah, I put in the chat earlier, but I think for me, I find myself often like procrastinate, like almost of like I have, for example, when I was working on building up AI coach, I would have like so many ideas and I would almost like wait and try to think my way to like, oh, I need to be at least like 80% certain before I act on it, because I'm like, oh, what if like I build and then it's just a waste of time. But so that I still like trying to learn like how do I like almost of like learning through action rather than like just sit and wait and think my way to certainty, because I guess AI coach keep telling me I'm very worried of like uncertainty and trying to like, well, like dialing down the wrong way, I guess. Not through action.
Yeah, I feel like I have a variation of that. So I think that's a common one, right? Where I like how you phrased it. You want to think your way to certainty versus act your way to certainty. And to me, that's like an example of one of these automatics or kind of micro habits that, you know, are trainable once you kind of identify them.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, so if any of this like work is interesting to you, so Tom and I are actually, we have been working on this like little diagnostic series through the AI coach, which is walks you through like 2 emails per week. You'll get like a little prompt that take like 5 to 10 minutes to reply to max. And then at the end, it'll issue you kind of an automatics report, which is like, what are kind of mental habits that you are running that are helping you? And what are some mental patterns that are like getting in your way, recommend that you rewire. We've been testing this. So this is an example from mine on this front. So this perfectionist preparation trap also sounds like overthinking and also sounds like procrastination and all these things and the uncertainty. So it's like, yeah, it's, I think there's a big piece of us wanting to like intellectualize things that aren't necessarily intellectualized. I mean, at least for me. So I feel like the more that I can kind of, you know, stop spinning on some of that stuff, it will give me a lot of mental energy back. So if you guys are, you know, interested in this, let us know in the chat where we can sign you up for it. Like I said, just like a Monday and Friday email, can add to the mix if you're curious in getting your little automatics recap on this.
Yeah, if you just put your name in the chat, we'll follow up.
And then also, we can continue the conversation, but we had to share this. So we were sharing the mental scale. We found this on Instagram. If you don't want to use the 0 to 10, you can use the scale of bread. On a scale of bread, how are you today? And this brought us a little bit more joy. And so we're trying to, you know, do this in more of a good mood and playfulness. So I'd much rather come in saying that I'm feeling crabby croissant, and that's a little bit easier to talk about. Yeah, so feel free to use the scale of bread if that is more fun for you. We just like that, but yeah.
We also made up momentum muffin. That's
Yeah, Mo.
what I aim to be.
Nice.
Yes. Feel free to create your own bread characters. AI gives you so many possibilities, so.
Oh, that's so cool.
Anyway, but yeah, any questions, thoughts, happy to continue the conversation, or people liked or disagreed with their coaching or any of the topics today you want to dive in on. Need to spend a minute on that.
Cool. Did you get any response from your coach, Brittany? Curious. Oh, I can't hear you.
No.
What about now?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay. I did. It said, insight, you're caught in the pattern of bracing, operating from anxiety rather than powerful energy, which stems from coming from yourself to idealize versions of leadership. You're a perfectionist, thinking about not doing enough is actually inhibiting the authentic connection and inspiration you want to create with your team.
So does it resonate?
It does.
Yeah, you can reply back to it just like a person. So you can, you know, say I don't agree with this part, or more clarification and context. The more you talk to it, the more the context expands, and it give you kind of more nuanced thoughts.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it was very helpful.
Okay, one thing that I will add that was prompted by, I think Mario put this earlier in the chat, and someone commented about, is it better to be quick or correct? And it makes me, or reminds me that what if we don't share, if we don't give our ladders of inference or kind of bounce what we're thinking of as someone else, our definitions of correct or good enough are often vastly different, and probably leads to some of the images that Tom and Laura included today. And so one takeaway for me is practicing, literally practicing more of getting to agreement over expectation. So agreeing with the small group I'm working on, whether Mario, it's creating the dinner with my family. I tend to cook more. Agreeing on like what's good enough for dinner today, all the way to like a huge project. And along the way, getting that agreement and holding each other accountable in interesting and fun ways, not always like beating each other up on the accountability. So I think that's the big thing about stacking the tool of agreement and alignment with this that we talked about today.
Just one kind of related thought on that. Like, I'm not sure that quick and like, is it better to make a quick decision or a correct decision? I'm not sure that's a true tension, meaning I think the objective is to get to the right decision fastest. Like, how do you make good decisions as quick as possible? And that comes, what I've noticed, especially working with the good decision makers that I work with, that they tend to expose their thinking a lot, and they tend to, they're not in pure think mode for a long time. They tend to take little actions to figure things out quickly, but it's decision making is sort of this active process, right? So
Yeah, I think there's an assumption baked in there that like, the assumption is if I wait, I will be able to get to correct. And that I think is not inherently guaranteed.
it's probably wrong.
Yeah, most of the time I would think it's not, because if it was already clear on what you wanted to do, you would just do it.
I think that's the old timey, that's the old habit. That's what I wrote to Kwan. I was like, often we'll procrastinate thinking that if I wait, I'll get new information as opposed to action to get new information, like one being reactive, one being proactive. But then something you said, Brian, about like the agreement and like everyone on alignment, what that made me think of was getting everyone's point of view out there first of what they think is gonna happen. I was telling Laura this the other day, like sometimes the three of us will think we're on the same page and we're on alignment, and then someone will say something that'd be like, wait, that's not what I was thinking. What were you thinking?
Well, it's almost like, I feel like, and this happens in business a lot, there's kind of like the logical conversation, and then there's sort of the emotive conversation. In the logical conversation, I feel we're often aligned, like, this is the plan, we're following the spreadsheet, this is what's gonna happen. But then the bubble over each of our heads is like, Laura's like, this is gonna be great. I'm like, disaster is assured, and you're just like, get me out of here. And so we're all in these like different directions.
And then someone will slip, and I was telling Laura, we'll enter this very like comic state of where we're like pointing at each other, and we're like, wait, we're not actually aligned like we thought
And
we
then if
were.
you think that emotional reality is actually what we're going to do,
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
but we're not exposing.
But we're not exposing it. So I guess that's what made me, when Brian was like getting to agreement, it's like first everyone needs to expose what they're actually thinking before you like agree on anything. Cause you might be agreeing to something, but you're all thinking slightly different versions of what's happening.
Yeah.
And then it plays out and you're like, what?
Well, that's when you get caught off guard, because then it exposes that like, that wasn't actually it wasn't actually on the table.
Yeah, like when my wife asked me to make dinner, I was like, yeah, but when she was like, is it gonna be like that way? I was like, oh, like it exposed to me that I was like, oh shoot, sometimes I'd be in a crappy attitude and make crappy food. And it's, you wanna hear what mine says, what my
Sure.
AI coach says? Cause I'm kind of at a understanding. But it says, insight, you're experiencing a paradox of confidence and hard work, feeling ready to win, while simultaneously feeling overwhelmed and not doing enough. The challenge is you make quick, positive decisions in your personal life, but you hesitate and second guess in business where stakes feel higher. Apply the 5% rule, spend less mental energy on outcomes, i.e. not doing enough, and more on the process, bringing your confident decision-making energy from personal life into business. Additional point, your barbacoa and cooking classes don't need to do more. They need the same decisive, present energy you showed at the beach. The readiness to win is already there. Trust your instincts across all areas.
Interesting that I talked about readiness in that, actually. It's like a piece of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
Did that
bad.
resonate to you or no?
It did, but it feels like it's just too fluffy.
So I'd reply back with more,
I mean, you could be like,
Detail.
this seems fluffy.
yeah, this.
Yeah, I think,
You
yeah.
can. You know, the one thing that it made me think of is like, I think it's saying that you need to kind of now create like gates into like your business practices. Like, so it's like you've been practicing at home, which you shared, which is cool. So now you've got like momentum and you're feeling a bit more comfortable in that zone. But like now you need to design an area that feels like you can underwrite the risk more on the business side. And it doesn't mean like go ham everywhere, but like you could kind of, if there's something you can carve out, maybe there's like a project or a person that you could like feel less risk on to start there, then you can start integrating into that piece.
Interesting.
What I think it's saying.
It's almost like I guess what it made me think of just this morning of what I was reading on the way in was there's an article about Elon Musk. He was saying how, basically the US government is totally dependent on what's his rocket company? Whatever it is.
SpaceX?
SpaceX to get into space. And he's like, the government can't replicate that because NASA is afraid of blowing up rockets, but Elon went through like a 5-year period of blowing up lots of rockets, and like he's okay with that kind of failure to figure out, how to build a rocket that, really kind of works. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. In software, that's kind of a truism. Like you kind of want to throw things against the wall and break things in order to more quickly kind of get to a really cool product. I don't know if there's something, I'm fully sure why I'm thinking that in relation to what you're saying, but it surprises me a little bit, I guess, to hear it's saying you're being cautious on your business, which makes sense because there's feels on a practical basis more to lose, but are you not taking the risks that you would in your beach trip or, personal situations?
Yeah, I wonder. That's what I have
It's
to
just natural.
think about.
Yeah.
I called it fluffy though. We'll see what it says.
Any other thoughts or questions today? Anything out of Boston? Good stuff.
Thank you. Probably next week, I think Greg will likely be giving a vibe coding class. It followed the week after, one of our kind of community members, Avi, former meta engineer, is going to also give kind of
His
vibe
perspective.
his
on
perspective on
coding.
vibe coding.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. See you next Thursday.
Bye.